Young Money. I'm Nozipho Mbanjwa. Today we're sitting down with the founder and CEO of the Elegance Group, and they have interests across a number of industries. He's a global citizen of note, but we are here in Johannesburg in South Africa. His name is Max Hussmann. Max, lovely to see you, lovely to meet you. Let me start off with a global citizen. Paint the picture for us. Where does Max come from and how does he land himself here in Johannesburg?
Well, thanks very much for being here, first of all. I think, cutting a very long story short, essentially born in West Africa, in Ghana to be specific, lived in West Africa for many years and grew up in my childhood in West Africa in various countries from Ghana, Congo, Gabon. Very fortunate, obviously, I think I only found that out at a later stage in my life. Then moved back to Europe. My parents were adamant for me to have European school education. Studied in the UK after all, and landed up back in South Africa in 2009.
So back in South Africa in 2009, bring the Elegance Group into the conversation. What have been your interests here in this particular market?
Well, I think initially our core market was always aviation, and we still are very focused on aviation. Probably around about 80% of our main business are still generated from the aviation sector in a variety of different fields, from fractional ownership to charter business. But over the years, we kind of grew and found a lot of other niche markets that we were interested in. And one of them we are quite passionate about is sport. Sport playing a very vital role in a lot of countries, and especially in South Africa. So sport has been a big portion for our business here in South Africa as well as worldwide. And of course, renewable energy is a big subject in African countries, which has been more and more growing, and probably makes about 6% of our total revenue as we speak at the moment.
It's almost mind-boggling to think that I'm speaking to a 30-something-year-old who has a business that has multiple interests across a number of industries and quite a significant market share in some of those spaces. Just paint a picture for us around your entrepreneurial journey. How do you get to a point where you have built this incredible portfolio?
Well, I think some call it crazy, others call it just being very driven. I think the point for me was always, I started off obviously in the business career as an employee, as most people did, and very quickly realized that working for someone was definitely not what I wanted to do. And there were too many innovative and creative ideas I wanted to bring alive. And essentially, how do you do that? By going your own way. And of course, the way is not an easy one, and there are a lot of negatives and a lot of downfalls that one has to go through. But standing up, I think, is the biggest importance for any entrepreneur. And that led to the point that my small vision in scale was always to sort of build a multi-industrial business that is not necessarily only determined about having the expertise in every field, but rather being led through the leadership. Of course, I mean, no one can be an expert in every industry, and certainly I am.
And that's pushing against quite the traditional sort of thinking, because everybody wants to be focused in a specific area of expertise, and it's almost as if it's not the right thing to do to say, I'm not an expert, and I'm okay that I'm not an expert, but I am a leader and I can lead different industries.
Yeah, it leads back to the question, what is right and what is wrong? Yeah. And, you know, how do we conduct business nowadays? I think companies as Virgin, or obviously Elon Musk being South African and now very successful, have proven that one can run businesses very successful without being in one necessarily industry. To answer your question there, I think it is really more about the leadership, and it is about how does one bring people together who have the expertise in that particular industry.
Now, when we start talking about leadership, I know that this now transcends beyond the business space, and having been identified as one of Forbes 30 under 30, your sphere of influence also must extend beyond the business place. Give me a sense of how you're reading the South African landscape right now, and where are you seeing the gaps, and what do you think should be done about them?
Well, as you say, I think being named as one of the 30 under 30 list in Forbes really was for me just the beginning of something bigger, and for me an encouragement to actually do even more outside of the business space. And South Africa is in a very interesting space at the moment that I think a lot of people around the world are misinterpreting or actually misunderstanding. Africa as a continent, in particular South Africa, has got so many opportunities that we take for granted, and we have got so many local conflicts and issues that we deal with on a daily basis, is it amongst corporates or in the political world, that we often forget what opportunities there are. And those who are going to be there in 30 years needing to sustain the country now need to be the ones that need to be supported.
And how do we support young people right now, in particular, not only just to have the right conversations, but to actually put down the building blocks that you think are going to be important when it comes time for them to step up and lead?
Well, I think the big understanding there needs to be that we can't do everything alone in South Africa. And we need to grow as a country, and entrepreneurs need to grow. And to build those bases and those foundations, we inevitably need to be more helpful, and government essentially needs to put more interest and more effective help into the young entrepreneurs that are now trying to develop themselves. Obviously, education is one big aspect, and we have brilliant universities in the country that are worldwide renowned. What is happening to them at the moment is, of course, not very helpful and completely going against any form of educational growth. As such, I do believe we need to be more international. South Africa wants to be international and prides themselves of being open to foreign investment. Yet South Africa is so filled with red tape that 90% of our clients or people that we speak to are actually rather shying away from getting involved in South Africa because they know that the bureaucracy behind is so tremendously big. And as an example, maybe taking Europe as an example, Europe has had a very difficult time to grow over the last couple of years. And there were big controversies in the beginning and issues that obviously were faced, and taking Germany as a particular after the wall came down. Yet over time, something has happened and something has grown into the right direction, and that obviously has got a lot to do with efficiency as well. So the whole growth that we need to put into entrepreneurs in South Africa needs to be placed in a way bigger focus than it is at the moment.
So certainly red tape that you've highlighted, but we also know that the country is grappling right now with the question of race and racism, and whether the social contract that we entered into 21 years ago is now in question. As a young person in South Africa, how are you seeing the future of this country? Are you seeing that we're going to get over this struggle that we're in now, and are you optimistic that it's going to get better?
I absolutely am optimistic, and I believe if it's not going to get better, then we're losing out on a massive opportunity to be one of the leading countries in the world. Race is obviously a very tricky question. As I said earlier, I mean, I grew up in West Africa to German parents, have always been exposed to all sorts of different cultures and races. So for me, the point of color actually doesn't exist. And what I think happens in South Africa at the moment, bluntly spoken, is that we are putting way too much focus on a problem that shouldn't be even discussed. As more we point fingers at the issue, as more we're going to have focus on it. Yes, things need to grow, and time will only tell when things are going to get better. But to force the problem out of the equation is not going to help either at the moment.
I suspect, though, there might be thousands and thousands of black unemployed young people who are squatting outside of the labor market who might react adversely to that statement, say, well, we have to talk about this, we have to put it front and center because we're still marginalized, we still don't have economic freedom. How do you then craft a message that also makes them part of the solution?
Obviously, that's a very tricky question, and one could debate that in length. But my view on this is, first of all, get going. The question is more you sit in the corner and drool and cry about a problem, as less you're actually going to be effective about something. There are opportunities out there for anyone. If you are educated or not educated, if you've gone to Harvard or not to Harvard, this is completely out of the question and irrelevant to the point of you being successful. On top of that, I do believe that the government has got a massive task ahead of them. Trying to create an equal level within South Africa amongst everyone is a task that is going to take years. And going back to the example I spoke about earlier with Germany, we had exactly the same situation in Germany, that the West and the East were not on equal standards at all. And of course, over time, in a lot of investment and capital that was issued, we were able to equalize both sides. And this is what has to happen in South Africa. We need to be able to equalize and give people an opportunity. Yes, 50% of the country won't like that. But at some point, we have to make that decision if we like it or not.
Let's take a step back to business and to young entrepreneurs who are watching this show and listening to how you also have a social consciousness in terms of how you're approaching the issues that are facing South Africa. What advice would you give around being an entrepreneur who can actually make a difference beyond just looking at the bottom line of their business?
Have an open eye and an open mind to opportunities that might come along your way that you haven't thought about. And bottom line is obviously always important to sustain a business and to grow a business, but your social importance and effect you need to have as well is absolutely crucial. And at the moment, to give you an idea, we are bringing sporting projects into South Africa that might have a more social impact rather than a profitable impact for us. But the long-term result thereof is something that is going to attract for us, again, a number of different clients and a number of different industries. So for young entrepreneurs, take what you can and work with what you have.
Do you think we have a common understanding of social impact? Because I think there are moments when people still have a very narrow sort of corporate social investment kind of approach, whereas social impact could be the very core of what sustains the business. Where do you lie in the spectrum?
Innovation is for me the key. And I do believe, and I agree with you 100%, that we've got too many corporates in South Africa who are old school thinking. Nowadays, we need to be able to take risks in the corporate environment, and we might need to be able to open ourselves to projects that have not come across our path as yet, and that might lie completely out of our strategy, marketing or socially. But it is important for us, and in ourselves, we put probably about 50% of our interest on a day-to-day basis into projects that will have a social impact, and other companies out there need to do exactly the same.
Max, as a final question, if we were to fast forward to Max being in the top 60 under 60, so another 30 years from now.
If I look the same, it'll be all right.
What's the legacy that you're hoping that you're going to leave, whether it be for South Africa or any of the many geographic markets where you play?
I think cutting it very easy and short is, my main aim is, I want to create a difference and I want to make change. I want to be able to be part of a growing Africa, and not just South Africa, but Africa as a continent. And that obviously plays part of the fact that I want to be able to, how should I put it? I want to be able to leave something behind that people can remember. Not necessarily just a business, but something that is going to actually affect positivity in the regions that we're involved in.
Well, there you have it. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. We're sitting down with the founder and the CEO of the Elegance Group. Clearly a businessman with many multiple interests across a number of industries, but more importantly, a global citizen who's also committed his life to living with social consciousness and bringing social sustainability to the very core of the business. Thank you for making the time to join us. Do remember that if you want the Young Money crew to come to you, all you need to do is drop me a tweet. It's #YoungMoney410 or following me at The Real Nozi. Until next time, it's goodbye.